What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants are 2-7, and they don't look like they have much left to play for this season. The playoffs seem like a long, distant memory. I don't think it's really possible that this 2-7 team can turn it around with Tommy DeVito as their starting quarterback and march their way into the postseason. So, with not much left for the Giants to play for, what is there? Well, that's not necessarily the case because there are a lot of individual players with a lot to lose and a lot to play for the rest of this season. Some of these guys are fighting for contracts that they might earn in the offseason, and some of them are fighting to keep their jobs on this team going into next season. So we're going to go ahead and discuss 3 players that we think have a lot to lose between now and the end of the regular season. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you are new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on this topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And I want to get your take initially on Xavier McKinney playing with a lot to lose between now and the rest of the regular season.
I'm doing pretty well, and look, if I'm like Xavier McKinney right now, there's a couple things that I remember. The first thing is the Giants didn't want to pay me this past offseason. Why? Because they probably wanted to see more. They wanted to see the best version of myself. Now, the Giants have not been good. McKinney has spoken out a couple times that have kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. He buried the hatchet with the coaches, so I don't think that's really a problem anymore. I don't think I'm factoring that into any, contract negotiations or whatever. In fact, I kind of feel like his frustration is warranted because we're all pissed off. Why wouldn't he be? So, I kind of don't hold it against him whatsoever. Yes, it probably wasn't the best time thing, but the Giants are bad and he wants to win, and I don't think that's a bad thing. So, looking kind of at, what happens now with Xavier McKinney, what do you do? I mean, clearly Anthony being in the dark here about it, I don't really know exactly if he knows what's going on with Xavier McKinney either. But, when you see a player of his magnitude, free safety, can play a good amount of different coverages, but I do believe that safeties are kind of a position that I'm not altogether that convinced should be paid big money. I don't know how easy it would be to replace him, but look at what the value we're getting from Jason Pinnock, who has been excellent at strong safety for us this season. Who's to say that they wouldn't be able to step in and find a free safety that can replicate Xavier McKinney's role at a much cheaper price point, like draft somebody in the second round, and then develop them into our scheme. Like maybe that's something the Giants would consider. Definitely not the Yankees, but the Giants would consider. But when you actually think about his value, I'm not even close to thinking about giving him top money. You know what I mean? Top dollar for a safety. I'm not on that boat, not on that train. If he wants top dollar, I think that giving him the door would probably be your best alternative because I just don't think it's worth it. $9 million per season, you could convince me of that. $8-9 million per season, but anything above $10 million, I feel like is a little bit rich for him personally. That's my take. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong, good player. But safeties are kind of the easier position to mask. Like, for example, go look at the New York Jets right now. They have, Ashton Davis playing free safety for them. They have, nobody out there. Tony Adams, and, undrafted free agent. And they have one of the best defenses in football. Having better cornerbacks is a lot more important than having a really good free safety. So, in my opinion, you're probably better off taking that money, investing in another really good cornerback to pair with Deonte Banks, drafting someone to fill that spot, and living to see another day. That's probably the better scenario than investing that money in Xavier McKinney. However, that's not to say we wouldn't miss him. We wouldn't lose that value. He's a very solid player. I just am not comfortable paying him top dollar because he hasn't shown us that he can be that top player, betting on the upside there. And I think we kind of need established guys at this point. We've been betting on upside so much and getting screwed. I think established players, Andrew Thomas, established. Dexter Lawrence, established. We don't know what Xavier McKinney's ceiling if he ever will reach it, and that's a little bit concerning to me. So, what are your thoughts on McKinney? And if you think he's worth top dollar right now, I'm definitely the jury's still out. He can prove it. There's still a little bit of time left here, but I definitely am still on the side of the fence right now that says I'm not really comfortable giving him that big contract.
So my take on Xavier McKinney is this. This is a really talented player who's playing in a good defense but still doesn't have the best supporting cast around him. We kind of mentioned this in yesterday's episode, Alex, where there's a trend here that we see with players who play better when they have great talent alongside them, right? We saw Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams play off of one another constantly post high PFF grades, put up great stats, and really make an impact on the game. Now we're seeing it. Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden playing alongside each other, both looking like elite linebackers. But with Xavier McKinney, he hasn't really ever played alongside a great safety. Now, Jason Pinnock, I like him a lot. I think he's coming into his own, and I think he has the potential to be a great player one day. He's still a young guy. But Xavier McKinney, also a young guy, blossoming talent. I don't think that he's ever played in a secondary that's been chock full of talent. Listen, we've seen Xavier McKinney make great plays, have great moments, 5 interceptions 2 seasons ago, a game-winning 4th down stop in the playoffs last year. He's an impactful player for the New York Giants, but is he an elite top money safety? Absolutely not. And that kind of pains me to say because you know, Alex, and so do all the long-term viewers of this channel, I've been super high on Xavier McKinney before he ever took a snap with the New York Giants. Like, I loved this guy coming out of Alabama. I loved him when he joined the New York Giants, and I still do view him very highly. He's one of my favorite players on this team. However, the production isn't there. The talent is there, but he hasn't realized that potential through these first seasons of his career. So as he's in this contract year, going into this offseason, would I be willing to make him one of the highest paid safeties in the NFL if I was Joe Schoen? Absolutely not. Now, I don't know what Xavier McKinney is going to be looking for on the market, but I do think that the Giants should let him test the market, right? Go out there, see what you can get. If you get paid like a top safety in the NFL, great, good for you. I hope that you have an awesome career elsewhere, but if you don't get that offer, come back to us. We'll make you a fair offer. We'll continue to develop you in Wink Martindale's defensive scheme. That's the way that I would play it if I was the New York Giants, and I think that when you're looking at McKinney, he hasn't been bad this year, but he hasn't been that elite difference maker that people expected him to be at this point in his career. We thought that, he would get better season by season, would build off of that 5 interception campaign from 2 years ago, but instead it's kind of been more of the same kind of mediocrity from Xavier McKinney. Like, he's not mediocre, he's a little bit above average, but he's not excellent. And I think that Giants fans really want him to be excellent. So him falling short of that excellent threshold has really put a sour taste in a lot of Giants fans' mouth and made him look like an underwhelming player, when in reality he is a good player. He's just not a safety that you pay top money to. So this offseason, I think that the Giants will try to bring back Xavier McKinney if they can for the right price point. I know that there's been a little bit of a stir in the media in recent weeks with Xavier McKinney. He's made some kind of inappropriate comments, I guess I would describe them. But even still, he's a captain on this team. He's one of the leaders on this defense. We've seen plenty of clips of him pre-game, post-game, giving those pumped-up speeches and helping motivate his team. He does a lot in the locker room. He does a lot on the field as well. Is he an elite difference maker? No, not yet. Will he ever be? I'm not so sure. But he is a good, quality starting safety. And guys, we've watched the Giants have years of bad safety play. Do I have to remind you how horrible it was watching Curtis Riley start a full season for this team? Xavier McKinney is far from a bad player, and I do think that he is worth bringing it back next season and for the foreseeable future at the right price point. And honestly, I would consider slapping the franchise tag on him, depending on what the Giants decide to do with Saquon Barkley, whether or not he gets extended or whether or not they decide to move on from him. I think that the franchise tag would make sense for a player like Xavier McKinney, who maybe you just give him one more season to prove that he can raise his level of play and reach his potential as being one of those elite players. But if not, I think that he's really going to settle out here as kind of one of those players, probably making more money than Julian Love, but definitely not making as much money as the top guys on the market. So a lot left to lose, though, for Xavier McKinney. If in this final 8-week stretch or however many games are left, he goes out there and gets those 5 interceptions, well, then he's going to have a lot more negotiating power this offseason. But right now, I think that the Giants aren't there. They can't pay him that kind of money. So he does have a lot to lose here if he continues to kind of play in that average to above range. He needs to start playing above average if he wants to get that payday. So, like I said, a lot to lose for Xavier McKinney. The next player, though, that I do want to discuss, Alex, this guy has everything to lose right now. That's Evan Neal, 7th overall draft pick last season, and he's just been terrible. Like, there's really no other way to put it. Plain as day, he's been a bad NFL player. Rookie season was poor. Did we see flashes? Did we see little glimpses here that we thought maybe there's something to develop? Absolutely we did as a rookie. Have we seen that this season? Not really. I think he's gotten a lot worse this year, which is the concerning part. You thought, all right, rookie offensive tackle entering the NFL, it's always a struggle. He's going to have his moments, those rookie growing pains. Hopefully in year 2, he fixes things in the offseason, comes back a much better player. That didn't happen for Evan Neal. He came back a worse player. His PFF grade is lower. His percentage rate of pressures is higher. His sacks are on the rise. he's just not playing good football. He's playing worse football than ever before. And so for that reason, if Evan Neal doesn't turn it around here before the end of the year, I think he's out of a job with the New York Giants. I think there's a chance they could cut him, trade him, or just bench him next season if he doesn't at least show flashes of potential, show any type of promise whatsoever, because he hasn't so far. He's injured, he's week to week, so who even knows if he's going to be back on the field anytime soon to change the coaching staff's mind. But I think that by the end of the season, Alex, and I want to hear your take on this, if he doesn't at least improve his play marginally, he's not going to be the starting right tackle next season. And then I think they try him out at right guard, and if that doesn't work out, his career with the New York Giants is probably over. So I want to know how you're feeling about Evan Neal. Do you think he's got any chance to turn things around and earn that starting right tackle job, or at least have a chance at it in the offseason? Or do you think that it's done? They're going to look for a new right tackle, maybe try him at right guard, and just begin to move on from Evan Neal?
So here's my take at this point in time. Well, right now he picked up a left ankle injury. He's week to week, right? So he's missing this upcoming game. He might miss multiple games. We know what week to week means for the Giants. Are probably out for 4 years. So, with Evan Neal right now, I mean, look, he is, as you said, not a good tackle. I think what we have seen relative improvements in recent weeks. He looked decent this past weekend before the injury, but the truth is this. I am still very far from convinced that he can be a good player at that respective position. So here, if I'm the Giants, is what I'm going to do. Next year, I am not going into training camp as him being the true and tried starter right tackle. They have to add competition. And guys, that may not be, at the end of the day, that may not be a free agent. It may not be someone we trade for, because listen, teams don't let good offensive tackles walk. They don't. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't do it. So if the Giants somehow manage to fall upon a decent option on the free agent market that's not going to cost a ton, I think that they should definitely be considering it. Maybe they do want to spend big if there's a big option on the market that will cost them an arm and a leg. They're going to draft a rookie quarterback maybe, and then they go out and sign a big guy with the money. Maybe that's something they do want to consider. So I'm not ruling that out either. It really depends on the market. I don't think after looking at the free agent market, there's going to be many offensive tackle options. I feel as though it's pretty thin, and the competition is going to be pretty steep. So here's my alternative solution to fixing this. I think that Evan Neal starts working in at right guard, and he starts playing both positions. He can be your interior right guard, right tackle, versatile option there. Perfect world, he takes over right guard full time, and that size that he has actually aids his growth and benefits him instead of being a liability because of the lack of reaction timing and speed off the edge. So I think guard does actually fit his body frame and his style of play a little bit better as more of an aggressor. With that being said, he can continue to still work in reps at right tackle just so he's ready to step in if the Giants do need him. But there needs to be a competition here. So my take is this: if the Giants can manage to hold on to one of their second round picks, given they don't have to trade, I think the Giants should absolutely be drafting an offensive tackle at the top, because they're going to have a top second round pick, right? You're going to have a second round pick at the top of that round. So you're maybe in the 33 to 35 range. They should be taking the best offensive tackle on the board. Look, the truth is this, guys. Not every freaking first round tackle is going to pan out, as we've seen, but players at every single draft grade, every single round, pan out. Micah McFadden's a 5th round pick. He looks like a really good linebacker for a long time. You know what I mean? McKinney was a 2nd round pick. You see guys, Bredesen was a 4th round pick. JMS was a 2nd round pick. You can get good players in the 2nd round. That's not to say they're going to be good, but I think that the talent drop off is significant, but it's still good. There's still good developmental players there. So, for goodness sake, the Raiders took the freaking Alex Leatherwood in the 1st round a couple years back, and I don't even think the guy's in the league anymore. So, you look at how the Giants can go about this. I think drafting a tackle in the 2nd round, if you're going to go with a quarterback in the 1st, is a great position to be in, because you can take a tackle, compete with Andrew Thomas, or rather, definitely not Andrew Thomas, compete with Evan Neal, and then you have an open competition there at right tackle, and I think that's for the best. But unless this is obviously the alternative to signing a big free agent. But right now, look, I think Evan Neal's season has gone probably the worst it could have gone. This is the worst case scenario for us. But the only options here are to acquire one via the draft or spend big money on an offensive tackle. And I'm not convinced the Giants are going to do that, especially because the options are going to be thin and other teams need offensive tackles. Maybe you try and trade. There's the option, Anthony. You could try and trade a mid-round pick for a guy on an expiring contract, maybe something like that. That's another option. So the Giants do have options. The good thing is it's right tackle that's kind of a liability and not left tackle. That's a little bit of a silver lining, is that we got the left tackle position filled for like 6 years after this season. Right tackle, we can invest in upgrading that position. Hopefully Evan Neal can take steps forward and maybe he blossoms. He's a late bloomer and can take over and be a good player for us, either at right guard or right tackle. But that does not mean we should not be bringing in substantial reinforcements to compete. So that's kind of my avenue. What would you prefer in terms of the Giants allocating resources to improve that position?
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation with a friend earlier today, and they were like, don't you think that it would be more beneficial to the Giants to draft a top 10 pick offensive tackle and then go for quarterback the next season in the draft? And I was like, no, absolutely not. That's what the Giants have been doing for years. They have stockpiled on offensive linemen. They have made a lot of draft selections. Andrew Thomas panned out excellent, but they also took a top 10 pick in Evan Neal. They threw a third and a fifth round pick on the offensive line last season as well with Marcus McKethan and Josh Azidu. They have tried. They have stockpiled offensive linemen through the draft. They have made plenty of acquisitions. The answer here, in my opinion, isn't investing another top 10 pick into an offensive lineman. It's investing into a quarterback who can elevate above bad offensive line play, who makes the offensive linemen around him play better. That's the answer, in my opinion. I've been pretty vocal about Daniel Jones, how I think that he can do more with more, but can't do more with less. He needs a good offensive line in front of him. There are quarterbacks in the NFL who can do a lot with a bad offensive line around them. I know every quarterback needs at least some level of decent offensive line play. They all need it to a degree in order to succeed. But objectively true, there are some quarterbacks who succeed more with less. And Daniel Jones right now, I don't think that he's that guy, and I think that the Giants need to find that guy who can do more with less. So when you ask me what should the Giants do, do they invest more draft capital into the offensive line? I said this in an episode recently. I think that the key here is to find more veterans, established players that you know are at least average to above. Just get somebody good. Like you just said, I said this on an episode recently as well. Trade a mid-round pick, right? The Giants got Darren Waller for a third-round pick. You could probably get a pretty good starting offensive lineman for a third-round pick. Are you getting a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro? Probably not. But you can get somebody better than all the garbage that the Giants have on their offensive line right now. So I think that you could probably ship Evan Neal out for like a conditional 6th or 7th-round pick. You take that, you throw that back into somewhere else on the roster with a late-round draft pick, and you probably trade one of your mid-round picks to get a starter at the tackle position. I think that's a possibility. I think it's something that the Giants absolutely do need to consider doing. But no, I don't think that the answer here is for the Giants to continue to take top 10 offensive line talents, because it doesn't always work out that way. When you just throw all of this youth out there on the offensive line, who's the veteran of the group to really lead them, to make them better, to show them the ropes, and actually give you consistent quality football without the rookie and young player growing pains? You don't have one. Yeah, Andrew Thomas is going to consistently be that guy for you when he's healthy, but other than that, who's that guy? The Giants didn't have that guy until midway through the season. Justin Pugh steps in, forces them to do weekly dinners and actually play like a team. So yeah, we saw a little bit of improvements in the team's camaraderie on the offensive line because of Justin Pugh, but they hadn't had that guy all year, and they're not going to get that guy by drafting another top 10 talent on the offensive line. So I'm actually going to be a pretty strong advocate once we get into this offseason, Alex. I'm going to be really against drafting another top 10 offensive lineman. It's not always a guarantee that you get a top 10 pick in the offensive line and he just becomes a stud at some point. We're watching that because of Evan Neal right now, and I don't think that the answer here is just to keep trying to do the same thing over and over, because that is technically the definition of insanity. The Giants need to go out there and get a veteran, solid, established offensive lineman. I feel really strongly about this, so I'm happy that you asked me that question and brought this up, because I feel really strongly that the answer here for the Giants and their future on this offensive line is not just to draft another elite prospect on the offensive line. There's a lot of quality starting offensive linemen in the NFL who were not drafted in the first round, and there's a lot of them who will be available in free agency or via trade, and the Giants need to get creative for once and go ahead and find some offensive linemen that way to bolster the unit. But also on the other end of the football, the other side of the football, the pass rushing department. Could the Giants be in the market for a new edge rusher, considering the lack of playing time that they've received from Azeez Ojulari over the past 2 seasons? Just like Xavier McKinney, another player I was super high on pre-draft, but things have gotten in the way. Now, I think Azeez Ojulari has had all that talent that I really thought that he had going into that draft, and I think that when he's been on the field, he's realized that potential. He just can't stay on the field, which has held him back, and now I think that as of today, he's being designated to return from injured reserve. This final stretch of the season, he's got to ball out. Otherwise, the Giants are definitely looking for new starting edge rushers in this offseason. If Azeez Ojulari doesn't stay healthy for the rest of the year, I mean, if he misses any more time with injuries, he's kind of done. He loses that starting job. That's going to somebody else. They're going to find somebody new who's more dependable in the offseason. But if he does stay healthy and doesn't make an impact, same story. So Azeez Ojulari's playing with a lot to lose in my eyes. He's got to go out there, prove that he can be the 1-2 punch with Kayvon Thibodeaux, get some sacks, force some fumbles, stay on the freaking football field. If Azeez Ojulari plays well, I do think that the Giants can feel comfortable going into the offseason with him as one of their 2 starting edge rushers. Yes, they absolutely have to add more depth to the position because of injuries to players like Azeez Ojulari. However, I think that Azeez Ojulari has a chance here to still win back that starting job that he's kind of seeming to lose here, but he needs to play some good football and he needs to stay healthy. So, Alex, what is kind of your projection for the rest of the season from Azeez Ojulari? I imagine you feel the same way as me. He's kind of playing his way into the starting job if he's able to stay on the field in the first place.
I mean, look, so he's supposed to be, designated for return relatively soon, and look, I think it's fair to say that he's injury prone now. Before the season, I thought it was a little premature. Now I'm convinced. At this point, you cannot consider him a starting player. He's a reserve. He's your second option. He's your rotational pass rusher. Mainly because if he's playing every single down, he's going to get hurt, right? Like that's my opinion at this point in time. If you invest in players that consistently get injured, you are setting yourself up for failure at the position. That's unfortunately the truth. If you're a Yankees fan and you watch Giancarlo Stanton play every single season, you know this. You're waiting for him to get hurt. It's just a matter of time before he misses weeks on end and his whole season goes down the drain. If you're the Giants, you're just waiting for Azeez Ojulari to get injured and lose half your pass rush. So at this point in time, he's got to prove it. He is not standing in the way of the Giants drafting or acquiring more pass rush support. That's the way I would put it. If the Giants are like, we need to invest in the pass rushers, he is the first one to get reduction in snaps. That's the truth. He is the first one that is going to be replaced. So because Kayvon Thibodeaux has been solid this year, and I think that obviously he has a long-term role on this team, and he's been healthy, knock on wood. So right now, if I'm the Giants, you're going out and getting more pass rushers because behind Azeez Ojulari, you have Jihad Ward, who's not very good. He's a fine run stopper, not very good pass rusher. So if you're Big Blue, you're probably going to be drafting some pass rushers in the mid-round next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they either traded or acquired someone via free agency. There should be some decent options available. And I think that's where the Giants probably look to upgrade is alongside Azeez Ojulari. Open it up for a competition, unless they bring in someone that's just better than him and healthier, which then he would kind of fall back into that role of being a reserve rotational piece, kind of like how they would use Boogie Basham, I guess, if he was a little bit more in tune with this team. He's obviously a little bit newer, but I just don't think you can rely on a player like Azeez anymore because he just consistently is hurt and he's super young. It's unfortunate because he's got such raw talent. He's such a good player when he's healthy. It just sucks to watch him get hurt like this and go down because we had so much excitement about him and so much faith that he was going to become a good player. But, injury bug consistently just hits the Giants year in and year out. So now we have to ask ourselves, can you continue to rely on a player like that? My opinion, absolutely not. You have to reinforce that position this upcoming offseason. I think that pretty much wraps up my take on that.
And I think it's a good take. I think it's valid. Like I said, I think that Ojulari, say he finishes the season, these final games, he finishes as a sack per game player. I think that he opens the year as their starting edge rusher. If he's able to string together a great pass rushing end to the season while he's fully healthy. And listen, I know that a sack per game might sound crazy off rip, but really, you take a look at his stats, he was nearly a sack per game player last year. He had 5.5 sacks in 7 games. If he's able to put up 5.5 sacks in the last 7 games for the Giants this season, they probably go into the offseason like, okay, maybe it's not the biggest priority. Maybe we can move into next year with Azeez Ojulari as our starting edge rusher and just hope that he stays healthy, but add a lot of depth to the position knowing that he probably won't. But if he just goes out there and he middles, I think he loses that starting job altogether. So I think he's playing with a lot to lose. I'm excited to see Azeez Ojulari get back on the field. Hopefully he's rested long enough and he's well rested enough to make that impact. I think that he can be such a solid player for the Giants if he does stay healthy. He's shown some tremendous pass rushing ability, guys. Like some of the moves that he has in his arsenal, they're deadly. And he gets after the quarterback, and he also forces a lot of fumbles. If you remember last season, he was forcing fumbles left and right when he was getting those sacks. He's a strip sack king, but he just can't stay on the freaking field. So we'll see what happens with Azeez Ojulari as he finishes this year. Sounds like he's going to be playing this Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. I expect that game to be a bloodbath and not in favor of our New York Giants. Hopefully we get to see some sacks from Kayvon, Azeez Ojulari hopefully, and get to see some of these players playing with a lot to lose, feel like they're playing with a lot to lose. Maybe it sparks a little fire under them and they start to play some better football. Again, I think that the Giants, there's a realistic chance that we don't win another game this season. However, I do think that following some of these individual storylines makes it a little bit exciting. I want to see if Evan Neal starts to improve. Xavier McKinney, what's going to happen with him and Azeez Ojulari as well. And any other players that you guys think that we missed, let us know down below in the comment section that you think might be playing with a lot to lose for the rest of the season. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.